institution, I'm so pleased to announce to you all our very first Sports Edition author visit. We have a wonderful panel of guests here who is going to be here to just give us some information, things that we really don't know about Major League Baseball, but it's really good information, and hopefully we'll so that we get resolutions. So I'm going to go ahead and start with introducing the panel. First, I'm going to start with the author of the book, A Bitter Cup of Coffee, Mr. Doug Gladstone. Okay, just a brief bio of Mr. Gladstone. Freelance author Doug Gladstone has been instrumental in shedding light on the plight of baseball players who fell through the pension cracks. In his book, A Bitter Cup of Coffee, delves into the challenges faced by the gap players, those who had less than 4 years of major league service through 1979 and were left without pensions. Recently, there has been progress in restoring some of their rights. Major League Baseball and the Players Association now provides stipends to the affected men of up to $11,500 annually, depending on quarters of service. However, this doesn't include the health insurance coverage or designated beneficiary payments for spouses or loved ones after a player's passing. Gladstone's advocacy has been crucial. He encouraged fans to email decision makers, urging them to recognize these overlooked players. While progress has been made, there's still work to be done. If you're passionate about this cause, consider reaching out to the league and the union to continue advocating for these retired players. Let's honor their contributions and ensure they receive the recognition they deserve. Mr. Gladstone's work serves as a reminder that every player's contribution matters, regardless of the length of the career. Okay, and I'm very pleased also, we have legendary Major League Baseball players in the house with us, okay? So, let's start off with Mr. David Clyde. Okay. Mr. Clyde was the first overall pick in the 1973 amateur draft. Mr. Clyde was only 1 week removed from his high school graduation when he first took the mound for the Texas Rangers that same season. A resident of Humble, Mr. Clyde's once promising career was derailed by shoulder problems and misuse. He is considered by many to be the savior of the Rangers franchise because of the attendance boost his being on the roster brought to the club at the time. And also we have with us Mr. Scipio Spinks. A flame-throwing pitcher who once combined with another future major leaguer to fan 37 batters in a Class A Northern League contest. Mr. Spinks' best season was not with the club that drafted him, namely the Houston Astros, who he was a September call-up for in 1969, but with the St. Louis Cardinals, whom he won 5 games for in 1972. A resident of Sugar Land, Mr. Spinks now coaches the baseball squad at the University of Houston downtown. So before we begin the conversation, we just want to let you all know that there will be a 45-minute time for the players to converse and just give awareness of what they're doing. And we'll also allow 15 minutes for audience who has questions. And that does include our online audience. We thank you all for watching. So let the conversation begin. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
First of all, a little housekeeping. I want to thank, obviously, the Houston Public Library for hosting this program. I want to thank Donnie for putting it together. And I certainly want to thank you all for really gracing us by coming out today. So, where do we begin? Let's start at the very beginning. It's a good place to start. I'm going to give you a quick history lesson. In May of 1980, the union representing ball players, the Major League Baseball Players Association, let the league know that they would not, that they would strike unless their demands and grievances were met regarding what is called a CBA or collective bargaining agreement. The hot button issue at the time was the number of players a club could protect on its major league roster to compensate for those players who had been lost to free agency. The union wanted to protect 30 players on a 49 roster, the league only wanted to protect 15. The strike was averted just before Memorial Day weekend when Ray Graby, who was the negotiator for the league, approached the great labor economist Marvin Miller, who was the head of the players union, and made him the following offer, and just like the Godfather, it was one that he could not refuse. "You call off your strike," he said, "and we'll reward your rank and file members by lowering the eligibility rules a player needs to be vested into the pension plan from 4 years to just 43 game days." Now, previously a man had to play 5 years to be vested for a pension, but that was lowered to 4 years in 1968, principally to allow the great Hall of Fame pitcher Satchel Paige to qualify for a pension with the Atlanta Braves. Just a side note, interesting little bit of trivia. That gentleman over there was a body double for the distinguished late Oscar winner Lou Gossett Jr. when Mr. Gossett played Satchel Paige in a movie. So anyway, the problem with reducing the time you needed to be eligible for a pension was that this agreement didn't retroactively include the pre-8 players like David and Scipio. Besides getting the vesting eligibility reduced to a mere 43 games, now that's basically, if you do the math, 6 weeks of service time on an MLB roster. The union did win some other key concessions. The minimum salary rose to $30,000 in 1980. Then it rose to $32,500, $33,500, and $35,000 over the final 3 years of the pact. The eligibility for salary arbitration was reduced from 3 baseball years to 2, and the owners finally agreed to contribute $15.5 million a year to the pension fund. But that thorny issue that I spoke about of the direct compensation to the clubs, that was tabled for another year, and that's how the strike was averted. Now, when I interviewed Marvin Miller for my book, ironically enough on Veterans Day, he actually admitted that he had entertained the idea of trying to change the vesting requirements so that men like David and Scipio could be included. But the plain truth is, he told me, we weren't ever going to refuse management's offer of instant pension eligibility. That just wouldn't have been in the best interest of all the members of our union back then. Now that is the way that things have been for the last 45 years. And I'm going to be the first one to acknowledge it is a phenomenal deal for any player who has played since 1980. For instance, that 22-year-old kid, your new right fielder, what's his name, Cam Smith, he made the club this past Tuesday. He started yesterday. So do the math. In 6 weeks, on or around May 15th, he's going to have his 43 game days of service credit on an MLB roster and be automatically vested for a pension. It's phenomenal. But again, I want to clarify this. It is days on an MLB roster, not how many games you appear in, that count towards the pension. So the starting pitcher yesterday for the Astros, Framber Valdez, well, excluding the playoffs, he'll only toe the rubber maybe 35 times this year, but he's not getting 35 days of service credit. He'll be getting a full year's worth of credit. So in essence, both David, who appeared in 84 games and threw 416 and 1/3 innings, and Scipio, who appeared in 35 games and threw 201 and 2/3 innings, they're being penalized not because they weren't great pitchers. They're being penalized because they played prior to 1980. Excuse me. So, again, it's the post-1980 players, that's what I'm trying to stress here, who are benefiting from this situation. For instance, former MLB pitcher Jim Dorsey, you might not have heard of him, he receives an MLB pension for appearing in 8 games, just 8 games. He qualified for that pension because he appeared in 4 games for the Angels in 1980 and 2 games each with the Boston Red Sox in 1984 and 1985. By comparison, David accrued 3 years and 33 days worth of service credit, but because, again, he played prior to 1980, he's on the outside looking in. So it took 32 years for the union and the league to agree to do something to remedy this reprehensible situation. About a year after my book came out, in April 2012, the league and the union announced that the men like David and Scipio would begin receiving annual payments based upon a convoluted formula that, in my opinion, had to be concocted by an actuary. The payments these men are getting, they're paid out of something called the competitive balance tax, or facetiously what old-timers like I still refer to as the Steinbrenner luxury tax. Now they probably call it the Cohen luxury tax. The tax is slapped onto a team whenever they exceed the agreed-upon salary threshold. For example, the New York Mets payroll for the 2024 season was $333 million. And as a result, the team was hit with a luxury tax bill of $97.1 million. That's all that $97.1 million is helping pay for the stipends that David and Scipio are getting. And how much do they get? Well, beginning in 2012, each affected pre-1980 player began receiving $625 for every 43 games of service on an MLB roster, up to $10,000. 10 years later, in 2022, that formula was adjusted by 15%. So now, David and Scipio each receive, hold on to your hats, a whopping $718.75 for every 43 game days they had on the roster, up to $11,500 a year. Meanwhile, you want to know what a vested retiree can make? Up to $275,000 a year. And the minimum this year, the minimum salary, is going up to $260,000. In David's final season with the Rangers, he earned the princely sum of $16,000. Now, does that sound fair to you? Because it doesn't to me. I'm a pro-union man. Unions advocate for all the hardworking men and women in this country and their families who are paying taxes. I've got no problem with unions. They support us working stiffs. I have a problem with this union. This union is stiffing the pre-1980 players like David and Scipio. According to ESPN, the average MLB salary was $4.66 million last year, which was 2.9% more than the year before. And according to my very good friend Max Efkin, the Major League Baseball Players Pension Plan currently has $4.6 billion in assets, with 9,670 participants. That is an increase of $400 million in assets, with 177 less participants from 2022. Even the staff at the MLBPA is making out like gangbusters. The union executive director, Tony Clark, in 2023, he received a total compensation package of $4.25 million. The union's IRS filing for the calendar year 2016, by the way, I found that online, it's not like I asked anybody, showed that 72 employees were paid $16 million. I ask you, what is wrong with this picture? And though MLB could step in at any time and do something about this, legally they don't have to. They don't have to negotiate about this topic in the CBA. And apparently, despite the contributions to the game, MLB doesn't think financially taking care of these two men and the 500-odd other men who were affected, taking care of these men isn't important enough for MLB to cut a check. Now, the league gives monies to a variety of projects and programs. It isn't assisting its own former players. It does assist the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. They gave the museum in 2017, they gave the museum $10 million. That donation helped build up the museum's endowment fund and support its exhibits. And while that was certainly nice, it was a gesture that basically screamed, we care more about museum relics than flesh and blood retirees. So it really falls on the union to take care of these men, but though the union supports a number of worthwhile projects, they support, for example, domestic violence initiatives, they support youth baseball programs in economically distressed neighborhoods. Taking care of these men, it's not a high priority ticket item for them. Instead, in my opinion, today's players and today's union leaders, in particular Mr. Clark and his players' pension liaison, the one-time Montreal Expo pitcher Steve Rogers, who I should note was the NL player representative when that 1980 strike was averted, so he signed off on this odious deal. They're getting fat at the expense of men who, like David and like Scipio, walked picket lines, endured labor stoppages, and went without paychecks. Also, that free agency could occur. Also, that someone like Juan Soto could sign a $765 million contract to play ball for the Mets. And you know what? Yeah, good for Juan. We still live in a capitalist society. The more money today's players can get for themselves, the better. Well, let's have a little healthy respect for the players like David and Scipio, who came before Juan or Shohei Ohtani, or new Astros first baseman Christian Walker, who signed a $60 million contract to play with the team for the next 3 years. Like I said earlier, there are approximately 510 of these pre-1980 players still living. Besides David and Scipio, they include men such as Richmond, Texas's own Jerry Lee Tabb, who was drafted with the 16th pick in the 1973 amateur draft, or Aaron Pointer, a member of the Houston Colt 45 in 1963, who later played for the Astros in 66 and 67. Aaron was one of the two individuals to last hit 400 in professional baseball, but more than that, Aaron Pointer is a diversity pioneer. He became the first African-American retiree in the Pac-10. Aaron's been taken advantage of as well. Or Dave Mose. He was an outfielder for the Texas Rangers who played for the team from 74 to 1976. Or Jim Panther, who pitched for the Rangers in 1972. Mr. Panther also pitched for the Oakland Athletics, who paid him the gargantuan sum of $5,100 in his rookie year of 1971. But also, let's have respect for the wives of these men, for the families of these men. Because when Scipio goes to that great baseball diamond in the sky, and we hope that's not for a very, very long time, neither his wife Jeanette nor his daughter from his first marriage, Terry Lynn, will continue to get that annual bone that he's being thrown. That's because it's really not a pension. What it is technically called a non-qualified retirement annuity. Women like Patty Hilton know all too well how heartless this union really is. Her husband Dave died in September 2017. He was born right here in Uvalde. He attended Jesse Jones High School and later Rice University. In his final season playing for the Padres, he earned $22,500. But when Dave Hilton died, that payment died with him. And you know what Patty once said? MLBPA the union, they are a soul-crushing organization. Folks, I am here to plead with you, to those who've come in person, to those who are viewing the live stream of this presentation, to those who registered online, I'm pleading with you to help me end this blight on the national pastime. See, what this is all about for me, I care about the little guy. Moreover, as the character of Jack Reacher says, I hate the big guy. I hate big, smug people who think they can get away with things. And that's why I'm not fond of this union, not in the least. And I'm also not fond, to be quite candid, of all the sports writers and broadcast journalists and baseball columnists who have turned a blind eye to this issue. If you've never read or heard about this dirty little secret, you can blame the countless number of journalists who have refused to report about it, all because they fear losing access to the players, to the league, and to the union. Here in Texas alone, we had a great columnist for the Chronicle named Jerome Solomon. He never wrote about it. Neither has Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News. And believe me, it is not like I have not tried to get the word out about this topic, as both those men will attest. I have killed more trees than herbicides ever have. If Woodward and Bernstein had shown this kind of cowardice, Nixon probably would have survived Watergate. When I started advocating for these men, I was just trying to help my childhood heroes to right a wrong that had been done to them. Back then I was a lone wolf, but today, besides Mr. Efskin, others who have joined me in this crusade include Jeff Coleman of the Internet Baseball Writers Association of America, blogger John Tubbs, baseball umpire Perry Barber, who spent nearly a half-century serving as an inspiration for generations of girls and women, and former MLB player Kurt Bravotwa, who now heads the MLB Retired Players Association. To them, as well as anyone else I've made left out, I thank you all for your efforts, both those that have already been performed and those yet to come. Now, if you want to see whether a certain player has been relegated to the dustbins of baseball history, just go out to Max's great site at www.bittercupbaseball.com, open up the multiple tab spreadsheet. It's organized by specific categories. Max started compiling it 3 years ago in 2022, and believe me, it is a font of information. And if by chance you want to get involved and you want to help restore these men into a situation that is not as reprehensible as it obviously is now, I want you to write to Marcus Semien of the Texas Rangers or Chris Bassett of the Toronto Blue Jays. They're the highest ranking player representatives on the union's executive committee. Please tell them to do something, and maybe remind Mr. Semien that he was among the 4 free agents who the Rangers signed in 2022 when they committed an extraordinary $561.2 million in free agent salaries to not only him, but Corey Seager, John Gray, and Cole Calhoun. I want to close by referencing something that was published 18 years ago before I introduced David and Scipio. In a March 1st, 2007 post entitled Pension Benefits for Retired Pro Athletes, Mark Eisenberg wrote the following in his blog, The Money Players. All professional athletes should keep in mind that they will be active voting members of the Players Association for just a few years, but they'll be retired players for decades. Reaching back to improved benefits of retired players, particularly those who literally sacrifice their bodies to help build professional sports into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, is simply good business. These guys stood together through often very troubled labor negotiations, even striking on several occasions, in order to improve wages and benefits not just for them, but for every player who followed. Fighting for former players, even the non-vested ones, sets an important precedent for future generations of professional athletes. Players take care of their own. Thank you for allowing me to visit with you today. It is now my distinct honor. Which one of you wants to be the starter and which one is the reliever today? All right. It is my distinct honor to introduce a man who, and I'm not saying this just to hear myself talk. If I were ever to serve in the military, I'd want him with me in my foxhole. Ladies and gentlemen, the great ball player from Humble, Texas, David Clyde.
It's an honor to be here today. It's for people like you that we played this game. Why, and today's player hopefully continues to play this game. It is a great game, although the path it is taking these days is very upsetting to a lot of us old-timers, the changes they've made and such. But we're here to fight for a lot of people that have not been nearly as fortunate as I have been. I've been blessed throughout my entire life. I was blessed at birth with a tremendous amount of athletic ability. I was blessed to have a great mother and father, a great family, and to be around a lot of great people. So I have lived a very comfortable life, not near as comfortable as these players have today, but what we fought for, we had a lot more to lose than what these guys do today. These guys in one night make as much as some of us made in an entire career. You know, you got a guy making $50 million a year. Divide that by 162 and you come up with roughly, you know, a very large number. You mentioned earlier the competitive balance tax that was at one point the luxury tax, the Yankee tax was what, 91?
All in favor, raise your hand. Hell, I thought they were talking about taking the bus to the airport. Yeah, let's get out of here. Okay, that's it. We're on strike. What? We're on strike. I'll never forget that word when he said that. And it started like, okay, blah, blah, blah. I was one of the guys, David Powell was one of the guys, and we fought to help these guys get their money. You know, they don't, half the Major League ball players today do not know what David and I are going through. It's not that we're multiplying, we're dying out. My fellow players that I played ball with against, they're dying out. And a lot of them don't have anything. They have to look for the stipend that they get, and it's from $50 to whatever. I had a Major League ball player come to me last year and said to me, I am so embarrassed that I get $1,000 a month and I only played a half a year. I'm embarrassed. He says, you should be getting way more. You should be in the picture. It doesn't happen. I played in a game that I loved my life. I gave my life. Baseball was over. God, family, everybody. I don't care what nobody. That was my God, was baseball. And I played it to the hardest I could play it, to the best I could play it, to be one of the best players out there. And I went out there and I gave everything I had. 1972, I was third in the National League in strikeouts, third in the National League in earned run average. Come the 4th of July, ran the Johnny bench, tore my knee up. I'm done. Okay, all right, you needed 4 years to get your pension. I didn't get it, I got hurt, playing the game I love, so I wasn't bitter. I just knew what was happening. Then all of a sudden, they changed the rules. They said you need 45 days. I said, good. David and I got our pension. Oh, but you guys don't get it. Oh, why not? Well, you weren't there after 80. I said, no, but I was there in 1972 when I could have walked out and crossed the line where you couldn't get nothing. I was there. So you weren't going to bring us in? They didn't turn their head until Doug comes around. I can't think of the two most hated men in Major League Baseball front office is Doug and David Clyde. Because he's on their butts all the time. All the time. I talk to newspaper guys, I talk to television guys. Oh, we're going to get on it, we're going to get on it. I never heard from them. Never heard from them again. You go talk to them about what we're doing, they say, okay, I'm gonna put it, this is my favorite statement, and it's Major League Baseball statement. What are you gonna do about guys like me and David Clyde? Scipio, it's on the table. It's on the table. That's all I hear. It's on the table. You know, thank God, my wife, she's there to help us and help me and my family get along, and we're okay. But I know there's a lot of guys living in their car or living in slums, waiting for that stipend to come, because that's the only time they can go out and probably have a good dinner or a decent meal. That's what this is about. And it used to be, they started sending that stipend out in the first of what? In the end of February? Then all of a sudden it goes into March. Then all of a sudden it goes this far and this far. You know, they don't send the pension checks out to the ball players. They send out the first of the month or whatever day they send it. They get it that day. They know that money's going. How many times I call you, Dave, did you get your check? Did the check come in? That's what we do. That's what we do. And if the collective bargaining agreement doesn't pass on the next thing, we don't get nothing. We're done. And you know what they do? They turn me back. I got one thing I'm going to say. Tony Clark, I read, he said the guys that are in your situation weren't that good. Well, I wish I had a pitch to you, Tony, and I'm going to see how good you would have been. Or against David Clyde, how good you would have been. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you, God. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. So informational, yet so important. Before we go into Q&A, I would like to acknowledge Mr. Scipio's wife, Miss Jeanette. We thank you for So we have come to this time that we would like to allow you to ask questions. So the way it will work, if you have a question, we'll just come to you with the mic. And depending on which side has a question, we'll go side to side. And we'll also allow the online audience from Facebook and YouTube to ask questions. This will be about 15 minutes. And then I'll do a closeout, and I'll mention the little goodie that we're going to have for you all on the way out the door. So we're going to start with the first question.
Terrence Turner from the Forward Times Miami. Thank you all for coming to speak with us today. Thank you all for having us. My question is for the author, Mr. Gladstone, as well as for Mr. Spence and Mr. David. What would an effective resolution look like for you, and what would you like to see happen moving forward? Like, what would a best case scenario?
Thank you for asking the question. I've publicly said ad nauseum that to anyone who will listen, that I think, given the economy of this great game, it is not too unreasonable to give every affected man $15,000, a straight $15,000 a year, and when they pass, in order that it is not any kind of a hardship on their widows or their designated beneficiaries, for a finite time, let that designated beneficiary or widow keep that payment for 3 to 5 years. I think that's more than fair. You run the numbers, you'll see it's not a lot of money. You know, it might be $6.5 million a year. Now, if you tell me that MLB and the union can't afford $6.5 million a year, I mean, I will respond that I think they can. So thank you for your question.
Ideally, make everybody vested in the pension plan. That would be the ideal situation. Fairly is what Doug is saying. Make it $15,000 across the board. There's so many things at work here, though, that I think baseball is scared to death of. I think they're scared to death that if they do something and make it a pension, I think they're scared to death of retroactivity. You start getting retroactivity involved in this, we go back to the 1600, go back 40 years, talking a boatload of money now. So how we achieve that, taking care of people that have passed on already, but yet we're in the same position that we are. I think those families maybe need some sort of acknowledgement, maybe just a one-time payment or whatever. But like I said, ideally, yeah, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, make us all vested, and be done with it. In the grand scheme of things, not a lot of money in the end. We're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry, and we're talking millions here. Granted, these are numbers that most of us, if not all of us in this room today, can't even fathom. But how we get to that situation, it's amazing the lip service that's paid to this, and nothing ever gets done. A perfect example, we go back to the 80s, early 90s. One of the gentlemen who was part of our group was an attorney, filed a class action suit against MLB. It was thrown out. It was thrown out of a court, a federal court in California. The judge said, I agree with you morally. but we don't have a legal leg to stand on. As I said, I was part of a group of 4 men. At the time was Bud Selig. He was not present, but Rob Manfred was, who was general counsel to baseball at the time. He's now commissioner of baseball. First words out of his mouth were, when we came into the room, were not "good afternoon, gentlemen," but "I'm over the lawsuit." Somebody else thinks about that. Are they over it? So we have a man, in my opinion, that sits at the top of this that has a grudge to bear. And therein part lies the problem. We have people in the Major League Baseball, or let's see, the Major League, not the Players Association, but what do they call the people in Colorado?
They call themselves the Major League Baseball Players. Or alumni. When an alumni group won't go to bat for alumni, what good are they?
And that's what I was getting ready to mention. There's people in that office that have told me you don't deserve anything. Now, I became a lifetime member of that organization when they first formed, thinking it was a decent organization. I'd ask for my lifetime membership. I am a member of a newer one that Kirk Devakla is heading, and I believe that gentleman's heading in the right direction. But, you know, a lot of people will think that we're just a bunch of spoiled, rotten people, kids that are wanting a piece of the pie. But as Scipio said, we fought for what these guys have today. And when we're told Scipio's a lot closer to the current players today than I am. The current players know about this situation that you know of.
Tim.
Yeah.
Really? They don't know.
They have no clue. And yet when we ask the people who should be telling these people, well, we talk about it all the time.
To go a little bit further, and I'm just going to